excited, and I want to thank you so much. I know you tackled traffic to get here.
I did. That's how much I love you.
I know. You must love me a lot to
I
come to Santa Monica. I called Suzanne. I was like, can you come do this, please? And she instantly was like, yes. And that was it. And
anytime I get to be around her.
Anytime I get to be around you, my friend. That's how we feel. So, yes, we do.
All right. So this is exciting. And Tamsen knows I'm really excited to interview the interviewer.
Yes.
This is like extra fun.
I'm happy to relax and be interviewed.
Just hang out. So wonderful to see all of you guys, because you all probably brave traffic too. I mean, the first thing I want to ask you is, what inspired you to write this book?
I know. Well, you all did. When you and I first spoke, we were talking about your book.
Yeah.
And I've been a journalist my whole life. That's what I did. That's where I came from for 30 years. And then one night I had what I later found out were symptoms of menopause on the news desk, and I ended up on the floor of the ladies' bathroom with.
You were on air when this happened.
I was on air when it happened. I mean, pretty average symptoms now looking at it, but then it wasn't. My heart was racing out of control. I had what now I understand was a hot flash. I was having brain fog that was getting worse and worse and worse and making me nervous, but I wasn't saying anything because I'm like, my job is to read, and I'm skipping words because I looked at them and I couldn't even remember what they were. So after that, I went doctor to doctor because I didn't know menopause. It was menopause, and I wound up after some blood work with a note in my patient portal that said, "In menopause, any questions?" from the doctor, and that was it. It was just like do you have any questions? It was in menopause. ... Any questions? And my husband, who's right over there, we were boarding a plane at the airport, and I was like, I'm in menopause. It's in my patient portal. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was 49 now at the time, and I didn't even know what to do with that information. And but it explained a lot, and I just went down this rabbit hole. And first the documentary, and then the book. After just realizing there's so much information that wasn't out there, and I just kept researching.
Yeah.
And How to Menopause was born.
Yes.
After 3 long years,
which is a huge thing. It's a huge accomplishment to do that work and to write a book and to get it out there.
Thank you.
And I think I love your work because you are speaking from the perspective of a layperson who has been speaking, because in medicine we like to make the separation, which I think
I'm a layperson,
but it's part of the obstacles that we all face is that it feels like, how do we speak the same language? And so when someone like you who is speaking that language can delve in and investigate yourself and then bring it back to everybody else in a language that is understandable, that's really powerful. What was that journey like for you? Because you were going through it yourself, and now there was this explosive momentum. Like, what was the process of figuring out both your own experience at the same time that this movement was developing? What was that like?
Well, it's been interesting, because I think, when we first were talking, I mean, you've talked about this for a long time, but I had no idea, and most women really don't until they just come up on it. And all of a sudden they feel like they look in the mirror and don't know who they are, don't recognize themselves, have crazy symptoms that make no sense, that aren't easily connected. Right. And the one that we know is hot flashes. Right. That's really what I knew. And so I think it's been interesting. It was definitely interesting when I set out to talk about it, because I was still on television, and that, you spent a long time on television hiding your age, not talking about it, and certainly not bringing up the word menopause. So that was, and that's like, with the work that you've done on television as well. And that it was just not
except for it's okay for me to be gray. Well, for real. Let's just, I'm interrupting you, but I really want to name that.
Now or always?
No, because I'm a doctor.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
No, seriously, like people are going to take me more seriously.
Right.
Like, it's really, you were subjected as a woman.
It was different. It's different. Yeah, because it was always, you just didn't talk about it. And you always kind of had this like timeline, invisible timeline, shelf life, right? And so, and I think a lot of women feel that in different careers. And so it wasn't anything I had ever talked about. And then when I went into this dive and I read that number, 1 billion women in like 2021. I remember we were still kind of in that pandemic-y time. And I went, how is that possible? possible? This many women.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I lost my mom early in life. She was 51 and I was 20. So it was certainly never a conversation. She had breast cancer. And so I'm assuming now that I look back, and I think I've shared this with you, that I look back and I think she was in, obviously she was in a surgical menopause, but I had no idea. She dripped sweat, feel terrible, hot all the time, couldn't go into restaurant. She had all these things, but we didn't know what was going on, and she laughed it off a bit. So, but watching everything that's happened since 2021, where I went out there thinking like I should look into it a little bit more, and then when we decided to do the documentary, we asked around, and most places were like, "There's no audience for it. It's a niche group of women." All sentences I heard.
Crazy.
All sentences I heard. And it's a niche group of women.
Niche group of a billion women.
For that. We don't have the funding for that. And I just went, how is it niche? It's like it's a billion women. And I had statistics and numbers and case study. I had all this research and data. And that came from women too. It wasn't just men that were rejecting us. And so we did it on our own. We bootstrapped the whole thing. We went out there with like cell phones and really bootstrapped it. And then when we were doing it, I realized that a film is only going to give you so much time to be able to talk. And I was interviewing so many doctors and experts and even people that were dealing with relationships in menopause or workplace in menopause. And so that's how the book came together, because there was so much more than just what happens in the doctor's office. That I think is really part of this journey.
What was the most surprising thing that you learned or encountered in putting the book together?
I think two things. I think I didn't realize when I set out to write it, in all honesty, when I go back and look, you have to do a proposal for the book that you say, like, this is what my book's going to be about. Here's the possible 10 chapters it's going to have. And when I go back and look at that versus what I realized when I started doing research was so different, because I thought it was like, here's all the stuff you need to know that's going to happen when you go to the doctor. So, I just want you to be aware of it. And here's some stories. But when I went back and really started writing, I couldn't take certain things out of it. Like, obviously we needed to talk about the brain and sex, but I needed to talk about things like breast cancer. I needed to talk about my mom's story, other women's story, relationships. I talked about dating and divorce during this time and workplace. So I had no idea when I set out to do the book that any of those would be part of it. And then it just kept getting longer. And then finally the publishers were like, okay, that's enough. You have 14 chapters. That's enough. But it is a 360 of a woman's life. And I don't think I didn't realize how much that's all intertwined. Don't you feel like that? Don't you feel like you keep feeling?
Yes, of course.
Right?
Yeah. And it's like what you think it's going to be about. You get deeper into it and you start learning things that maybe hadn't occurred to you, or making connections, or all of a sudden like the shiny object is actually over here.
I did that a lot too. I did that a lot too. I was like, there's more. But I interviewed 42 experts, including yourself, for the book, because there really is that much that I needed to understand. And I didn't know that information, and I wanted to distill it in a way that was understandable to me. And so that's why I have there's a big section in the back of all the resources, because I just wanted people, if they wanted to go look at more, then they can go do that. But I need it. It's brain fog proof for me. I was like, I need it simple. I need to be able to read it. Right. And so that's how I wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah. Were there any, well, in a way that's kind of the same question, so we'll leave that aside. What would you say is the thing that you most hope people get from the book? I mean, is there?
That's a good question.
And I know that's not a fair question.
No, it's a good one. No, it's a fair one. You know what I think? I hope that they understand that they have no choice but to take charge of their health right now. And I think that I've always gone to the doctor, and like whatever the doctor said, I was like, okay, got it. Maybe I'd do a little bit on my own. Maybe I'd go to the health food store and talk to somebody there and like try to have my own different way. But I didn't realize how important it is because of, 1, the lack of research, 2, the lack of education, 3, the amount of misinformation, how important it was for us to take charge of our health. And that is what I hope people get out of it. I hope they use it as a guidebook. I hope they use it as like, maybe it's not going to answer every single question, but it'll get them to a place where they don't feel afraid or intimidated to go into the doctor and say, look, this is what I think's going on, and I want to work on this, or I need some help in this. Is it perimenopause? Are these the symptoms? And to be able to talk to a doctor in terms that they'll understand too.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important. I think it's important. And we, you know that there's not a lot of time when you're in the doctor's office, and there's not a lot of, and the doctors are doing as much as they can, and it's not their fault. So I think that it's incumbent on us to take charge too.
So I think related to that, because you have spent your career in front of people and in the media, and now you have this really large presence and this large platform online, which I think is where I personally think that's where a lot of this menopause momentum really came from. I feel like it was the pandemic. And I actually think it was sort of in the wake of Me Too and like Gen X. There's like this really interesting cultural mix that came together. Then we're all stuck. We're like online and finding community. But now, you know, we love the internet.
Yes, we do.
and it can be a minefield.
It can be daunting.
It's very overwhelming. I mean, as a clinician, I have people coming to me all the time. And because I spend a lot of time online myself, people are confused.
Yeah.
People are really confused. They're getting a lot of different information from a lot of different sources. It becomes unclear.
Overwhelming.
Yeah. How to manage all of that. You know, what is it? Trying to drink from a fire hose?
Yeah, it is. It is.
What are some nuggets that you think you can offer, things that you learned? What do you think? Please solve the problem for us.
Hold on. You know what? I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that it is hard. And it was hard for me as I was writing the book, because every time I'd come across something else and I'm like, well, what's this now?
Right.
And you really have to go down into it. And it really came back to the data and the research and really looking at where things come from, right? And also realizing there's not this cure that we all want there to be. And I think that's hard sometimes. You know, when you're suffering, you just want an answer. You don't want to dive into 5 different things. And so I think that that's difficult. And I guess that my one piece of advice would be over and over, if somebody is promising the magic cure, the magic pill, the magic answer, the one thing that you need, like, that ain't it. You know, it's just not it. And I know a lot of women get very frustrated they spend a lot of money, they go down these different paths. And so I think I just want that to not be the case, because a lot of it does come back to very basics of the things that we talk about, whether you're going to do hormone therapy or you're not going to do hormone therapy. There are some non-hormonal options now, and there are a lot of lifestyle, and there are a lot of different things that we have not even talked about that need to be brought to the forefront. There's more research being done. And so I'm hopeful that, because I know a lot of people are jumping into it now. Like I get a lot of press releases because I've been in journalism a long time, and it'll be like, come to our event, and also, menopausal women. And I'm like, where did that come from? Like, why are you doing that now? Just to like kind of be in the thing. And like, I want it to become a trend. A young woman said to me, she stopped me the other day, actually right along Montana Avenue, and she said, I went to my doctor with a lot of these different symptoms. I'm like, I think she was 41 years old, and she said, my doctor said, no, you're not in perimenopause. That's just trendy right now.
Oh yeah.
And that's that was really upsetting to hear that. It's the first time I'd heard it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just awful. And that scared me quite a bit, because I thought, oh no, we've got to work harder, faster, quicker.
Well, I mean, I'm noticing that as women are getting more educated and advocating for themselves, I think you're right. I think we're going to see a new flavor, unfortunately. Yeah. I'm going to just tell a quick story, because I just came back from American College of OBGYN, which is our big governing body. It's where we get accredited through. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest scientific meeting in the women's health world of the year. I've never been, by the way. That's a whole other story. Wow, because I go to other meetings. But it was really interesting, because there was a presentation, and at the end there was a Q&A, and a doctor came up, and look, I understand this exhaustion that people are feeling from the doctor's side. You named it. And she said something like that, like, I have this patient, and what do I do? She thinks blah, 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 blah. And she described what was going on with the patient. Mm-hmm. And the presenter stopped her and said, it sounds like she is in perimenopause.
Wow.
Which was really powerful on both sides. You guys understand what I'm saying, right? Because the clinician was like, eye-rolling frustration, which is really a symptom of her own burnout, by the way. Like, she's overwhelmed, and she's trying to do 50 pap smears in a day. Yep. Right. But I also loved the way the response.
Can you imagine?
No, for real. I'm like not even making that up. But the response from the authority was very firm, very non-judgmental, very clear. Yeah, that is perimenopause. So I think we're struggling while you all are struggling. And I think probably we should be holding hands and trying to like kumbaya it out a little bit more. That's my perspective.
No, you're right though. And I think that that's what I hope that the book did is provide a bridge somehow. You know, I'm not a doctor. I refer to all the doctors' books in my book. I think that it's going to take all of us together to get to the next place to where we don't have another generation dealing with us. And in 10, if we look ahead 10 years or 5, I hope it's sooner than that, but look ahead 10 years, we're not in the same place, that we have to keep talking about it, quite frankly, that we have to keep, I'm sure we will be, but I'm hopeful there are some different types of understanding and solutions and not the misinformation. But I agree with you. I think that's why I say to take charge, because I think the only way you can do this is in partnership with your healthcare provider, whether it is in person or online. The only way you can do it is if you have the information, so if somebody is turning you away or not, or dismissing you, or not gaslighting you, or whatever it is, and also so that you feel more confident. Like I feel very confident now when I walk into a doctor's office. I didn't used to. I just like show up for what I had to do, and like whatever they said I would do, and that would be the end of it. And so I do feel like, they probably are like, oh gosh, she's here again. But I do feel like now I can talk the talk a little bit with them, or at least, refer to something. And I think that's important for our confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I do. What are like, maybe, I don't want to give you a number, but what are a couple of things that you've changed in the way you take care of yourself that you feel has really made a difference for you in this period of your life?
I used to hear the word like, oh, don't have so much stress. And I never understood what that. I'm like, how do I stop that? That seems like air. Like, how would I stop stress? And but I have noticed that I've tried to pay attention more to things and not dismiss them. And so when I was working full out, it was like 15 hours a day. I'd get into work at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I would get off the air at 11 o'clock. I'd go home. I'd have a Red Bull before I went on the air to keep me awake, because it wasn't a great, they weren't great habits. I wouldn't have written a book about those habits for sure. But I do think that I have really prioritized a couple of things. I think one of them is like paying attention to the stress part of it as much as I can. It's not realistic to say you're not going to have any stress or you're going to know how to handle it all. But I do think I've paid attention to that, and I'm listening more to my body, and I'm aware, and I'm not putting it aside when my shoulder has like been hurting for whatever amount of time. And I think I did that for a long time. I dismissed the symptoms. I said, oh, I can't read that word. Maybe it's because I'm tired, or I'm feeling my heart, but I don't know, maybe it's because I ate too much, drink too much caffeine, or, I always dismiss things away. So I've stopped doing that. And I'm moving a lot more. I would like to say, I'd like to brag for a second. I walked 18,000 steps today.
Wow.
I know.
Oh my
Thank
God.
you very much. I don't know why. I was on the phone, and then my phone just died. And I'm like, why did it die? And I realized I had been just walking all around, because I just got to LA from New York. So I was so happy with the sun. But I'm moving more, and I'm just like, I'm out there, and I'm trying to take care of myself. I'm not perfect. I don't eat perfect all the time. I try as best as I can. I try to get as much protein as I can. I don't know that I'm at 30 grams per meal, but I try as best I can, and I forgive myself, and I don't think that I'm like this awful person if I can't do it.
That part.
Yeah. Oh, you're terrible. I just, I did that I did that long enough.
Yeah.
I did that long enough.
Yeah.
So don't you feel like that? Do you feel like you're
100%.
a little more free of like?
Yeah. But I have to talk to myself about it.
I do too.
Because I will notice that I'm trying to get back on the groove and the record that I'm accustomed to.
Yep.
And then I'm like, why am I doing that? I actually don't need to do that. Like, I'm fine.
But it was just
like, but I have to tell myself, hey, you're fine.
Yeah. No,
Stop doing that.
But I think that's something.
But I'm doing it.
I love it. I love it.
Right?
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's a big change. And I guess at the end of the day, I think that we have gotten to where we are in life, and we're really lucky to be here. And this is one part of it that is not necessarily the the most pleasant, but there is that other side of menopause. And I do feel that feeling that people told me, like, hey, I got this. I went through this. I feel good now, and I know how to take care of myself. And so that's what I want for people.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's what I want for people.
It kind of answers the question I was going to ask you next, which is like the narrative has been a lot of negativity and I think fear. I think the negativity honestly is coming from a place of fear.
Of unknown.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, I hear over and over and over from people who really like, we live in this, how positive it has been for all of us. And I know you've experienced the same thing, like a renaissance in your perspective on yourself, your relationships, your life, even your career, your purpose. You know, other than stating that, what do you think we can do to help welcome people to the other side? I feel like we're on the other side of the river. And we have like, we should be like,
we're holding hands.
Come over, it'll be okay.
A few more hot flashes later, 3 more. You know, because I didn't know that was real. I was like, what? I have my purpose. Don't worry about it. My purpose is to work 15 hours a day. And, you know, that was my record all the time. I think it's that it's that feeling settled in like who you are. Like I feel grounded in who I am right now. And I do feel like something does happen with that shift. And I don't think it comes easy, and I don't think it comes the next day. But I do feel like I walked away from my career now a year and a half ago, which I never thought I would do ever. It was all I lived for. And but then I realized the more I was researching, you're talking to women, and then the film, and then I knew the book was coming. I just knew that there was something else that was driving me every day, waking me up in the morning. I didn't want to go to sleep at night because I was so excited about it. I was on the anchor desk doing the news, like menopause, you know, I'm writing about menopause and looking at it and thinking about it. And so I do feel like it kind of finds you, but I do feel like you've got to get yourself feeling good physically, or at least feeling confident that you're on the path to that, right? That you're doing something about it. And I think that that's what's important. When you feel like you're doing something about it, that gives you that confidence. And it eventually comes.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's great. I love it. And you have so much more to give, right?
I feel like there's a lot more years. I didn't think that originally. I was like, all right, well, I don't know what I'm doing next. You know, I never had a next. I never thought about that. But I have an 85-year-old father now who's like taking guitar lessons and learning how to like make bonsai trees. And I'm like, what? So I've got some work to do.
Oh, that's great. So you have an example.
I do have an example. Yeah, I didn't with my mom, obviously, because she died early. But my dad is like an example of really finding purpose that later in life. And I think that's really encouraging.
That's so interesting.
He didn't have to go through menopause, but
true. Okay, so God, you're just setting me up. Speaking of which, like, what do you think we can do to better educate and bring our partners, our friends, our brothers, our uncles, or whatever, our coworkers who are not going to go through this, but who are going to go through it? Because if you're adjacent to any human woman, you're going to go through it. Like, what I feel like that's kind of the next. I mean, we got a lot of work to do with us.
We do.
Still,
we do.
But I think we do need to bring everybody else into the conversation. Because it affects everybody.
Oh, it does. And I'm actually encouraged, like every time I go to speak or if I'm talking to somebody, the men are listening now. Before they'd be like, ugh.
Right.
And they'd go over and just try to get away from it as quickly as possible. But now they're listening, they're asking questions, they're asking the questions for their partners. I had somebody reach out from high school, and he said, my wife, I think, is going through menopause. Could you send me a book with something to tell her it's going to be okay? And I was like, yes, like, that's very cool. And so I do think that more men are aware of it, especially in the workplace. And quite frankly, in the workplace, it affects the bottom line. Employers are getting interested in it because they want to know how they retain this type of talent. And so I think that it's important to be open about the conversations, and look, we're just having them out loud. So imagine what a partner or an employer feels. But I did a whole chapter on it because I thought it was that important to put that in there, and a script to talk to a partner about, because I don't think it's necessarily easy to say, hey, all of a sudden we went from madly in love and this amazing life and sex life to like, don't even touch my back, like don't even come near me, right? I know that what's the next thing means. Like, don't even do that part. So don't even do this.
Their foot touched my foot. Oh God. Or like you're getting closer, like it's too, like there's heat radiating off of you, dude.
And stop breathing.
Like, also, could you not chew like that?
Could you not chew ever?
Not the time to bring it up, sir.
You're right. Yeah. But I think that the more that they understand, then they've got the same reaction to things that we do. It's like having a little more confidence in understanding all of it.
Yeah.
So it's important. It's really important. I didn't think that, because initially I think when we all started out, we were like, men, we got to deal with us. But now we're like, no, you need to know too. if I'm going to suffer, you're going to suffer with me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the solutions are going to be together.
I do too.
You know, you mentioned, you know, are you noticing, because you and I had a conversation where we got to keep moving.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, it's good. It's good.
At that restaurant, I remember we were talking with Elisa about the corporate environment and like what we can be doing to help ease the way and create solutions. Are you noticing that there's more interest and openness to that in workplaces?
I am. I think I'm noticing it in the larger workplaces. It's still a lot for the smaller. I think that more places are open to it, but they want to really understand what is, right? Like, what is it that we need to do? Like, what's enough, right? What's the low hanging fruit? What, you know, are we talking about benefits? Are we talking about flexible days? Or are we talking about providing some coaching and classes? And so I think that, you know, and that, I think it runs the gamut too. There's like so much you can do for advocacy. And that part gets me excited because that's where we're going to speak to more and more women. That's where we're going to be able to do that and then like really affect the numbers. And so, because if you're in a place where, you know, whatever, there's 14,000 employees and approximately 7,000 are women, then you've got a real, you're making moves and having some movement and all of it. So I think it's a good place. And so, yes, some places are more open to it. I think there's still a lot of confusion about what that is, but we're seeing some of the big companies do it. So that's promising.
Is there anything you can share with us, like any large, because that's exciting to me.
Did a big movement, and that was exciting to us. And then, and I've talked to like 2 different ones right now that are in the process of putting big workplace policies together. And so I'm hopeful when they actually announce those and release them, that'll make other people want to jump on board so they're not being left behind. But when I went to my media company that I was at, I went in and I think it was just ahead of time, and I didn't really have a lot of examples. So there's a lot of workplace policy in the UK, and they've really led the way in that area. So I brought in a policy from the UK, and I was like, this is what they're doing at a television station in the UK that's run by a woman. Can we do it here? And they're like, what are you asking us to do? You know, I went into HR. I didn't really even know. And I said, we just need a menopause policy. They're like, what is that? And I said, I don't know. It's in these documents. I mean, that was really how naive I was.
Yeah.
It was like 2022.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and they discussed it. And then I wound up leaving before anything was implemented. So I'm hopeful that it comes back around and we start seeing it bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's important there?
Oh my God, I think it's so important. I think for visibility purposes.
I do too. Yeah, I do.
Because, and I think what happens is it validates the individual's experience, and it signals like our culture around our workers is important and inclusive. Like, I mean, of course, now we're in this time where like we can't use any of these terms, but as human beings. That is really important. That is really important. Yeah.
Well, and also for young women that are in perimenopause, like I wish I had known a lot of these things. Like they're going from, you know, pregnancy into maybe an overlap.
Oh, that's a huge thing.
It's huge.
That's a huge thing with women getting pregnant later.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Unrecognized, I think, until I wasn't even thinking about this. This wasn't even on my radar until maybe a year and a half ago.
No,
like, you know, having a baby at 41 and now you're like, oh, you're just tired. You're a mom. Like, girl, you're in perimenopause also, you know, all of it. It's really, I feel like perimenopause is like the next Rubicon because, I mean, we sort of are going back to where we started, which is great. But I think bringing in the younger women, giving them the support that they need because they're going to face a system that is overwhelmed is going to make a huge difference. And I will tell you, that in my own practice, my younger patients use words like investment. When they come to see me, they literally, I have had that term used repeatedly, investment. And my women my age and older use the term indulgence. It feels indulgent to them.
To take care of themselves?
Yeah.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
And I share that with both of them.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important, like cross-generation. And also I'm trying to reach these women who I'm like, why would you think that your health is an indulgence? It's literally all you have.
Well, somebody stood up at another one of the events I was at, and they said, when do you think I should start hormone therapy? Like what does it look like that my symptoms are bad enough? And I said, there's no such thing. Like they're already, it's already.
If you got to ask the
that question,
yeah.
it's yesterday.
Yeah.
And so, but it was like, that was after an hour and a half discussion. So it's very ingrained in us to feel like that. And so I do think, going back to what you said, like, what have I learned and done differently? Like paying attention to that stuff and not thinking it's all a luxury. Sleep's not a luxury. Moving's not a luxury. Now, it's not like, oh, someday I can do that. The someday is now.
Yeah.
The someday's right now. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah. Oh, I see you moving your hands. Oh, what a place to. That's perfect. I love that. The someday is now.
I love talking to you.
I know. Same. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
much. We did.
We met during pandemic time,
yes,
right?
Yes, we did.
On Zoom.
And then actually, because when my book was like the publicity push, I got booked on your podcast, and then I met you at that first Swell event.
Yeah.
In October of 2022.
We just keep hanging around, going city to city with a big group of us. So
it's gathering. It's like a tumbleweed gathering.
It's trying to gather people from all different cities.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
I would love if there's any questions. You want to take some questions, because they're probably gonna have questions for you.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm a midwife.
Hi.
Prescribing MHT in the community, and I feel like when I have women in mid-40s and up, it's such a joy to have them, because I'm like, okay, good, we're gonna do this, and it feels a bit more straightforward. But I'm sort of struggling with this subset of women in their late 30s, early 40s who don't quite believe that hormones could be supportive because they're not having the hot flash that is FDA approved for. But the mood and the balance of life and the juggle is clearly harder than it needs to be.
Right.
And it's this mid-range exploration for myself as a provider, as well as for them sort of opening their minds to this possibility. And I'm just sort of curious what your input would be, kind of these women who are investing in themselves, and from your research, how would you optimally sort of put them at ease and maybe approach this notion of it's not just about a hot flash?
Oh yeah, I think that's that. I'll let you talk about the medical part of it, but I think for me that is, when we talk about what that next conversation is, I think it's two. I think it's perimenopause, but I also think it's that longevity conversation. Yes. Those three tiers of like your brain, your heart, and your bone. Like those are the three things that's going to be it. And so I think that's where I would look, because I agree with you. I come up on that constantly. Like, well, if it's not that bad now, what difference does it make? And I said, in my mind, I'm not treating my hot flashes right now. I'm not treating any of the other things. I'm treating I don't want to happen as I get older. I think that's, and not everybody can do hormones, obviously.
And not everybody wants to do them.
Yeah.
What I would say, building on that, is that your opportunity is to educate and empower. People don't have to do anything.
Yep.
They have to have the right information to make an informed decision rather than a fear-based decision. And I think with older women, the more obvious fear was like post-Women's Health Initiative, it's going to kill me. With the younger women, it's so interesting. I was just on the phone with my team on the way here talking about how can we talk more about perimenopause. And I think a lot of it is just internalized misogyny and ageism, right? Because if you would identify with the idea that you are inexorably moving toward menopause, then you're claiming age, which is not something that we're really encouraged, especially as women, to do. So you're a midwife. Just be like midwife them through that. They don't have to. They don't have to. What's the compulsion to make a decision during that visit? I know you don't think that, but I really think giving them the resources, reading books like this is very, very helpful. And then there are stats. Like, for instance, I can throw one stat out at you. I think something like 15% of women will start to experience vaginal dryness or GSM well ahead of any other symptom. So that's just a fact. So, you just arm them with facts. They'll come back when they're ready.
And if you're doing it at that young age and they've got a little bit of time there, they've got like that little buffer of it's
it's not like at 39 they're going to get osteoporosis now if they don't start hormones
Right.
today. That's not the data. The data does not say that. You got lots of time.
Yeah.
So, and the truth is, their lifestyle is as important.
It's so important, and that's an easier conversation to have then, and let them guide them into the next area. I wish somebody was talking to me about that.
Yeah, right.
I
had no idea what was going on at 39. I was like a complete crazy person.
I was a crazy person.
It was horrendous. I had no idea.
I didn't have any idea, and I don't know that I would have cared. I think I was just on my I would have been like, I don't know. I'll figure it out later.
Don't have time today.
Years later. Hi.
Suzanne, I have a question for you. So you were just at that conference.
Yeah.
I just want to hear what was happening in the room because thank goodness you guys have written your books. The documentary is out there. We're reaching bigger audiences. But I want to know what's happening on the medical side.
Yeah.
We're so lucky in LA. Like, thank
Yeah.
God I have you as my doctor.
Right.
So I can.
You are lucky.
I know. Right? But I can come to you and ask you these questions. But you know what? I didn't come to her until like a few years ago, and I was fully in perimenopause.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
Years. And you immediately were like, catch, let's go. But what's happening in those conferences? Like, what's happening in other states, Georgia, Florida,
Oh, yeah.
North Carolina? Like,
Yeah.
Where? Because I feel like, we're quicker to move on some of these things in California, whereas it's harder to get the confidence of the medical providers to recognize the symptoms and move forward with treatment in a faster way.
Yeah,
Are you seeing most movement? Like,
yes, I am. I mean, here's the thing. There's the data on how long it takes to go from like academics into clinical practice is like 17 years. Yeah. Now that's for let's say a watershed moment in science, like a paper or something like that. But I will tell you that like every other thing that I've seen happen in my career in women's health, it is always grassroots. It's always the women demanding better, right? So, whether it was childbirth education, breastfeeding in public, period, sexual health, that wasn't coming from the top down. You guys rose up and said, enough. Yeah. We're not going to accept this anymore. And that's what's happening now too. So that is moving people. And I will tell you again, like I wasn't joking. I have never been to American College of OBGYN meeting. I go to the sexual health and the menopause. I go to all the weird plant stuff and the vegans. I don't know. Whatever's weird, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm interested in. But I will say that I was really pleasantly surprised because you've got to understand this is like thousands and thousands of doctors and they're trying to do soup to nuts, obstetrics, high risk OB, cancer, blah, blah, blah. But there were a number of menopause focused talks. They were packed to the gills. So people really know that they want and need to become more educated. And I think the fact that the scientific committee planned for that is really, really responsive to what is happening. I know last year at Menopause Society, which is the organization that's really devoted to menopause education, it sold out for the first time ever. And this year, I mean, listen, my colleagues were all like, you got to register today. We have, I have like 5 text threads with all these crazy menopause people. And I mean, I was like, oh my Lord, you guys, it's 6 a.m. here in California. I'm getting on now. But, people wanted to make sure that they could get their registration. So that is my long-winded way of saying it is changing. Now, how does that leak into practice? It takes a long time. I think that the telehealth platforms are doing a great job of reaching these communities. Yeah, they're gonna be the ones who really,
they're gonna move the numbers. Yeah, the telehealth companies. I mean, look, we didn't have that really. We
No,
didn't have that before. We didn't even have that option. I do think it's interesting that it is still. I guess I thought I had lived past a time where we needed grassroots movements. You know what I mean? Like of women. Like I didn't realize there was still something else out there.
Well, that's literally what your film is, though.
Yeah, I know.
Like going from like town to
I
town.
just had no idea that was gonna. Well, we didn't even know that was gonna happen.
It's amazing.
We were, because we were people said no so much that I was like, oh gosh, I don't know. So when we did it, I talked to a friend of mine. She goes, I think this is gonna really be something that women are going to want and need. And I was like, we'll see, nobody, PBS did partner with us, obviously, and thankfully aired it and like was really great about it and continues to air it. But I really just I wasn't sure, when you get told no so many times on something, you're like, I don't know. And then now it has been in over 700 cities in 42 or 45 countries.
That's amazing.
So it's just
wow, that's awesome.
It's really been amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so, so I guess the reason I like it is because that is what gets into these communities. We've had it gone into countries where they didn't want any films about women in those countries, and people brought the film in and snuck the film in to be able to watch it and help the women, which is pretty spectacular. Yeah, that's how we get into those areas.
Hi, Tamsen.
Hi.
The M factor was very profound.
Thanks.
And are you in the process of possibly making an M factor 2? And the other thing I want to ask you is about postmenopause. Because in your book, you write, perimenopause and menopause is temporary. Postmenopause is forever. And we really don't focus so much more on postmenopause because we are going to be living on that stage of our life the rest of our lives. And it's very crucial, especially when it comes to bone density, Alzheimer's, dementia, and all the things that you already mentioned. Heart health.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. We do have something else in the works, and so hopefully that is going to happen and be able to be announced at some point. We're working hard on trying to pull all that together and see what comes of it, because we really didn't realize what that film was going to do, and I think we're not prepared for it. And now we're like, okay, now we see. We did surveys and we really listened to the audience that came into all those rooms and wanted to know what they wanted, what they were hearing, what they were missing. And so we really listened to that. We actually have that report that's going to be coming out in the next month or so. So that's what we're going to base it on. And then with regard to postmenopause, I mean, I really think that's what that second half of the book is really about, though I didn't say like this is all postmenopausal. But yeah, I think that's the part that we're going to be living in for a third of our lives, if not more. And I think that's the part that we've got to focus on. And I think that's what you do, really, because that is the important part, because you're going to get through perimenopause and into that one day of menopause, and now it's everything else, and it is forever.
Exactly.
It is where you live, and it's going to be how you decide to do it. If you decide to do it where you're taking charge of your health and really like reclaiming that part of your life. And I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about, like finding purpose and figuring out what we want to do, and putting all of the BS aside and not worrying about what other people think. So.
Yeah, and having the glutes to handle it.
And yes, absolutely, absolutely, and we do.
Living those ways.
We do.
Will our bodies be able to process alcohol post-menopause?
Gosh, I hope so. I know.
It's not good for you anyway.
Yeah, it's not. It's a bummer.
A couple of things. First of all, I'm thrilled to get your book, which I will be reading this week. I do want to emphasize something that you brought up, that many of us, my friends included, were great advocates for, whether it's our kids, our husbands, our parents. I've mastered being an advocate for myself through this menopausal journey, and I think that's imperative.
Good.
I'm post. I am like over the hill post-menopause to the point of no return. What I found is that for my bone's sake and libido's sake, I am now on an HRT. And you may address this in your book, and I was curious to hear what both of you have to say about this. I had to go through, she knows where I'm going to go, so many tests because of my age to allow me to be medically allowed to go on an HRT for my bone health and libido. And I'm lucky I'm able to, and now they're trying to balance it out, because it's not just like take 1 tablespoon of this, 2 of this. It's a whole thing, and they're doing it. It's a balancing act, which makes me feel like I'm back at the beginning of menopause, to be honest with you. But it's interesting, and I didn't know how prevalent it was, and maybe you can speak to this, about having to go through all these tests for somebody who's older and going through that, because you can't just go on HRT out of the blue after 8 or 9 years of menopause.
You're talking about after the 10-year time span.
Yeah. I mean, how do I respond to that? I mean, it's true, and I think that speaks to sort of what I was referring to is this whole cohort, multiple cohorts who lost out for 22 years on the offering of hormone therapy because of misinterpretation of the data of the Women's Health Initiative. So then, and this has been sort of a big issue in the last couple of years as people are talking about it more, people coming in and saying, well, look, I'm 60 something or whatever it is, I'm this many years from menopause, what can I do? And it's a much more complex situation. So I think, which is to your point, it's why it's important for us to be educating our younger people about this, so that again, they're making decisions that make sense for them. We're really in a process of playing catch up for people who are postmenopausal. And the reason that all that goes on, especially when it comes to cardiac risk, is we want to make sure that the benefit at this point will really, the risk is pretty minimal as long as you don't have other risk factors that have accrued in the intervening however many years. So I'm glad you found a team that is helpful to you.
And
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. It is, I have 6 people that I go to. It's exactly
And it's about communication, though,
Yeah.
but there are plenty. I had a patient of mine came in yesterday and said that her cardiologist was so happy that she's on hormones.
That's great.
And I was like, oh my God, my new best friend, But you know,
it's getting all the other disciplines.
Yes. To not because
educated
right,
and not
right.
confusing women even further. Like,
yes,
I
you
mean,
can
you
have
know,
a great gynecologist who's on board, and I think this happens a lot in LA.
Yeah.
And then you go to 3 other docs
Yeah.
who scare the crap out of you
Yeah.
about it. And we were talking before we started the talk about just like this whole, before at the time of the Women's Health Initiative. So like when I trained in medicine, late 90s, early 2000s, over 40% of the population was on hormone therapy. And now I think conservatively, and I mean generously, it's like 4%.
It's 4%.
So
And
again,
even
not
with
trying
all
to
the
sell
talk,
hormones
right,
to everybody,
right.
but it's just not even being offered.
Or it's being, or if you go and ask, in a lot of cases, going and ask for it, you get all this like, I don't know.
Yeah,
And as soon as
pushback.
you have a doctor that is questioning what you're asking, you're like, oh, okay, then what am I doing? That steals your confidence. And I think that was a reason for the book at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because there's just not enough doctors like you and the doctors that we know that are willing to sit down and have these and really educated about it too.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we get there. I'm actually happy to hear that those conferences were packed, because I have to imagine at some time they were like, oh, hope we can get some people to sign up. And now everybody is jumping on board.
Well, it was very much like a small club.
Yeah,
and I think that is changing. Yeah. And I also think I think there's a different kind of culture with our younger docs. Like I think there's less defensiveness. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but that's my sense. That's a sense. There's more, and also earlier in your career, you're still more open and curious. Yeah. Still trying to learn,
Well, a lot of doctors were there stuck in the middle when that study came out, and they were like, everything just kind of
it was an explosion.
It was an explosion. It's confusing. And I think it's a great thing that you have doctors that are testing and balancing and making sure, because you go in to get hormones and it doesn't mean like, okay, I've got them and that's it. There's adjustments. I've had adjustments. We all have to have adjustments depending on where you're at.
So I have an identical twin sister, and I'm actually working with my doctor to do hormone therapy, and hers is actually putting her on ADD meds, because when we were very young, they said we had ADD, but my mother just threw us outside and was like, go play, whatever. But now that we're getting older, and we're both noticing like our memory, and we've had Alzheimer's and dementia in our family. And so, but we're both have pretty much the same symptoms. Mine are a little different because I also have fibromyalgia, but which that's the doctor saying are bouncing. I don't know if that triggers menopause, and they go back and forth. So is that normal? Is that common to
have 2 different people who are twins get totally different meds? Yes.
So it's like we're the same. We have the exact same symptoms. Is that normal?
Oh, yes.
ADD and menopause.
Yes, this is a conversation we're having right now. We don't understand enough about the brain, and I think it's your perspective, like your perspective and your clinician's perspective, and there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. I think I will say that if the ADD meds are helping your sister, that's awesome. The ADD meds are not going to do triple duty. They're not going to decrease her risk of osteoporosis and help her, metabolic state. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong. I think this really speaks to the fact that it's not one size fits all. And we really have to individualize how we're approaching our lives, because again, this isn't a pathology. This isn't a disease. This is a physiologic state. And so again, it's why I say these things over and over and over. Like, we need to be educated, have like sort of a menu of possibilities that may change over time. A lot of people wind up on hormones and other kinds of therapies. Of course. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a matter of having options presented and working with somebody over a long period of time.
And going back to figuring out what you're treating. I always think what you're treating is you're treating today, or you're also looking toward what you're treating in 20, 30 years.
Yeah. there was somebody over here.
Just on that same note, one positive thing about hormone options is the vaginal estrogen.
Yes.
I'm a nurse educator, and I'm partnering with a urogynecologist to help the population that I serve, which is an older female population. And so I've seen the women being hospitalized for urinary tract infections, sepsis, and encephalopathy. And those are things that we can fix. They don't have to die from those things.
And they don't need any extra testing.
They don't need any testing.
That's right. You could just
estrogen.
slap it in there. Yeah. Don't do that. Sorry.
She doesn't say that in the office.
I do, but I do. Correct? Yes.
But you can, and I've even heard I've been listening to so many podcasts, and since I found Tamsen's book, I am doing a huge deep dive to become an advocate in my community for these older women.
Oh,
good.
yay.
That's so great.
We really should be talking about it, and
Yeah.
it should be every practitioner that touches these older
Yes.
women.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Because
great.
The sheer number of women that
Yep.
are coming to this age
Yes.
are not served by the physicians. We don't have enough physicians
Yeah.
to help them. And I've even heard that, I think it might have been Dr. Mary Clark, I forget who it was, but they were saying that when these women come in and there are patients in the hospital, they should be getting vaginal estrogen
Mhm.
prescribed to them. It should be on their MAR, and they should be getting it. And that means educating nurses on how to give it
Yep.
and what this means and what it looks like. And I think that is a whole area that we don't want to miss.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because those are things that we're all going to end up with, right? I mean, I've seen it.
Yep.
And I hate to see vaginal atrophy. I was listening to a podcast today, and one of the doctors, I think it was, there's so many people I'm listening to lately because of you. And she was saying, I hate vaginal atrophy. If a doctor says that to a woman in their office, they're going to panic and think,
Yeah.
what is going to happen
Yeah.
to me? But those things can be mediated.
Mhm.
And I think it's a really, really important aspect to not forget about, and there's no testing needed
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
And almost all women can use it.
No, pretty much anybody, unless you have some kind of allergy to a binder,
Exactly.
which means you can get a different format.
Mhm.
And you should know that other medical associations are having these conversations. So the urologists have been way out ahead on this. They
Yes.
just
Yeah.
put out a
The
position
GSM
paper
guidelines,
last
yes,
week or
yes.
2 weeks ago,
Right.
talking specifically about this. The oncology, our cancer colleagues are really starting to talk more about this. There is more cross-discipline communication,
Mhm.
and people like you who are nurse educators are really critical to the conversation because you're talking to other clinicians and you're talking directly to the patients.
Right, and
So,
even to colleagues.
yeah,
I have a really
yeah.
good friend that went through stage 3 breast cancer almost 10 years ago now, and I said to her, you're suffering, you need to ask your oncologist
Yeah.
about vaginal estrogen.
Yeah.
She came back to me and said, her doctor said, absolutely.
Yep.
There's
Wow.
nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
It's not going to cause you, it's not going to absorb systemically.
Mhm.
There's no contraindications. And marriages are in your book, right? I've read it already. This is my second
Thank you.
copy. Marriages suffer. Your connection with your partner suffers. I mean, just all of the things that come along with that. And I mean, the hospitalizations I've seen and the sepsis.
I can't
and
imagine
the
what you've
IV
seen.
Antibiotics, and it's really a tragedy, and it's something that we need to be talking about. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping with the Urogyne that I'm partnering with at the hospital that we can get this into. I want to do a CME with her.
Oh my God,
And
that's
get the
amazing.
doctors to just all of them being aware of it and being comfortable to prescribe it in the hospital settings to start there.
Mhm.
That is
Start
amazing.
there.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
It's a passion project, and
Good.
truly,
Thank you for
I've been
doing
so
that.
blessed by just all of the people that you've interviewed in your book
Thank you.
and the education I've received just since I got your book in my hands.
Thank
and
you.
Released. It's
Thank
been
you.
an incredible learning
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you
I
so
appreciate
much.
it. I have the podcast now too. So I was
I've watched them all.
Oh, okay.
I've watched both of you on many things.
Okay, good. We're just trying to go a little deeper in those conversations. I feel like I always get stopped, like stop writing or stop filming. But with the podcast, I'm like, I can just keep asking questions. I'm so happy. So Dr. Suzanne will be on it soon.
I think it's just really important what you said, that this is not a disease state. We are not sick,
No.
right? And so people are afraid to complain because that means you're sick.
Yeah.
And in fact, we have an ICD-10 code and you have to diagnose it as something that's wrong, I think is a problem right there. And normalizing it, we're all going there, unless something happens first, but we're all going there. And so I think that's important to get away from the sickness.
Yeah.
Just like, this is normal.
It is.
How do we prepare for normal?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Can I just say something real quick to add to that? If you think about what women go through after having a baby, it's matriarchs. So it's a different phase. So if we could sort of share that with women, then it's not.
So we talk about this a lot because
when you went through adolescence, we weren't doing your hormone levels.
Right.
You were going through, it was like
Thank
a normal
you.
thing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly
This
right.
is a normal thing, right? And so, yeah.
So we can
That's
just call it
important.
matronescence or something. They're different
Yeah.
words.
Right.
So it's not the stigma of
Yes.
menopause.
Right. We haven't failed.
Right.
We're still living.
Right. I'm a nurse. I work with pregnant women, but I'm
Right on.
hearing this, and it's like they need to educate yourself.
Well, this is
Well,
why
you
the
can do my
early- the
menopause
the early, the
certificate, my
30-year-old
menopause
needs to
facilitator
Really important.
certification. That's why I produced menopause boot camp. My menopause boot camp book came from menopause boot camps, and then where's Sharon? I train people to facilitate, and it's great. Anyways, whatever. I don't want to steal your thing.
No,
but you can
go
talk to
ahead.
Sharon or me. Okay.
Does vaginal estrogen help with bone health?
It does not. It does not. It is for genitourinary syndrome and menopause only. So genital and urinary symptoms.
Which is why it's safer.
That does help with bone health?
Yeah, I mean, systemic estrogen does, and later on, there's other things. So that's if you want, we can do a clinical consult at another time. But yes, there's many things: weightlifting, weight bearing, vitamin D. There are medications designed for osteoporosis treatment and prevention. Yes, many things. Yeah.
One more question? Did you have a question?
I did, but my brain is kind of going like.
You're in the perfect place.
Yes,
for brain
exactly.
So I'm in the journey with everyone, and Tamsen, I have your book through my sister.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you because my sister brought me in. And honestly, I've been feeling horrible today because we were traveling and I was just kind of, I have some of migraine. So I was trying to rally to be here and listen, but it made me think, because I was having a hard time visually focusing on you all, but that's the headache. But it made me remember another symptom of perimenopause that I just read: double vision. Is that unusual? Is that something you've heard about, Suzanne? Or-
That sounds like you would want to make sure it's definitely nothing else. But if you're having a headache or you have migraines, that can be part of the migraine. And people sometimes will have more migraines and more headaches as their hormone levels are fluctuating. So, but I mean, is that like a common one? No, not really.
That was new. I read it. I was interviewed. I was reading for somebody else who she was saying she was having double vision.
Yeah.
Her doctor, and her doctor seemed to think that was a normal symptom of.
I mean, here's the deal. You can like see all these listicles and the 17 billion symptoms of perimenopause. I mean, look, I'd be careful. If you're not feeling well, you should definitely see somebody. Let me just
There are
say that.
estrogen receptors all over your body, but if you have something like that, that's not on one of those common, there's lists everywhere.
It's important to talk to someone about any symptom you're having and not just assume anything.
Exactly.
Yes.